A historic fight that stopped the boxing world may not have been the windfall many assumed. The blockbuster between Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford, staged under the glare of Riyadh season and streamed globally by Netflix, delivered record-setting numbers and generational stakes. Yet, according to promoter Hearn, the event's main patron, Turki Alshik, may have absorbed a loss once the lights went out and the invoices were tallied. Do megafights like Canelo versus Terence Crawford make financial sense in the streaming era, or are they prestige projects with soft returns? Drop your view in the comments, and subscribe for deep-dive boxing business coverage, confirmed purse news, and the latest on Saudi Arabia's fight calendar and Netflix's next moves in live sports. What looked like a commercial slam dunk on the surface came with startling economics behind it. Reports pegged Canelo Alvarez's purse in the $100 to $150 million range and Terence Crawford's guarantee around $10 million, before any ancillary bonuses. Those are enormous numbers, even by boxing's inflated standards. Shortly after the event, Hearn appeared on Ariel Helwani's show and, without claiming access to the full ledger, offered a sober read. When you pay that level of money to fighters and layer on the cost of staging a Riyadh season spectacle, the show may run in the red. I don't know the numbers, but there was probably a loss on that show because of the deal Turkey did with Canelo and Crawford, Hearn said. He added that the generosity toward the fighters, combined with the scale of production in Saudi Arabia, can outstrip any gate or rights fee. He was equally clear about where the risk sat. That wasn't a Dana White show, Hearn noted, in a nod to the UFC boss's public enthusiasm for boxing's biggest fights. It was funded by Turki Alshik. The comment lands because it conflicts with the casual assumption that record attention equals runaway profit. Boxing's business model is complicated, and the details of this night matter. This was not a conventional pay-per-view tied to a North American cable platform. It was a global stream on Netflix, a platform that prefers subscription growth and engagement KPIs over one-night transactional dollars. Instead of chasing 1.5 to 2 million PPV buys at $84.99, the event leveraged a massive licensing fee and a worldwide audience at the cost of a narrower revenue split. That model is powerful for reach. It's less straightforward for promoters who rely on the PPV back-end to help balance the books. What Netflix brought to the table was undeniable scale. The broadcaster said the fight drew more than 41 million viewers worldwide, pulling boxing back to the center of the sporting conversation for a weekend. That kind of distribution is priceless for a sport that too often speaks to itself. The arena numbers were equally staggering, a $47 million live gate, the third largest in boxing history. Those figures made headlines because they should. But they also do not erase the reality of costs. If you're paying 9 figures to one fighter, 8 to another, and you add the bill for a Riyadh season production, your expenses climb quickly. Saudi megacards come with features few markets can match. Custom staging, lighting rigs that rival stadium tours, all-access flights and 5-star accommodations for hundreds of VIPs and fight industry stakeholders, weeks of on-site rehearsals, security on a citywide scale, and a marketing footprint that blankets continents. These are the reasons the shows look like nothing else. They're also why even a $47 million gate and a lucrative streaming license might not cover everything. The gap between spectacle and profit is not unique to Saudi Arabia. Mayweather-Pacquiao famously generated a $72 million gate and more than $400 million in domestic PPV revenue. Mayweather-McGregor cleared $55 million at the gate with another torrent of buys. Those are the outliers in a system where most big nights live off a delicate stacking of rights fees, gate receipts, sponsorship, and international sales. If you swap classic PPV economics for a global streaming deal that values reach, and you attach unprecedented guarantees to the talent, you are no longer optimizing for near-term cash recovery. You're optimizing for brand, audience, and long-term positioning. That is where Turki Alshik's strategy comes in. As chairman of Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority, he has turned Riyadh season into a magnet for elite sport. Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou, Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight title, Anthony Joshua's return nights, the Day of Reckoning card that stacked multiple headliners, and now Canelo versus Crawford. The through line is obvious. These events aren't just line items. They're national projects designed to attract tourism, diversify economic activity, and recast the kingdom as a global stage for culture and sport. In that context, a loss on a single show is not a failure. It is a calculated investment. Nearly every promoter of mega events, from Olympic hosts to NFL Super Bowl cities, accepts the split between event P&L and program ROI. Saudi's approach is simply the most concentrated version of that model in boxing. The headline purses and the cinematic stage signal seriousness. The broadcast partners, first DAZN and ESPN, now Netflix, signal reach. The long game is visibility, partnerships, and a global calendar that runs through Riyadh. Eddie Hearn's comments also touched on the narrative around who deserves credit. Dana White, who has teased Zuffa boxing for years and recently celebrated the biggest games in boxing, was, in Hearn's telling, a messaging layer, not the bank. The distinction matters because it highlights the structural difference between UFC and boxing. The UFC centralizes its stars under one banner and controls pay with ruthless efficiency. Boxing is an open market where a Canelo Alvarez can command a 9-figure guarantee based on leverage and timing, and where a Terence Crawford can negotiate terms that reflect historical significance rather than house policy. The upside of that freedom is generational paydays for fighters. The downside is that promoters and hosts sometimes swallow risk that does not pencil out, at least not on that night. None of the financial debate changes what happened between the ropes or how it resonates. Terence Crawford authored a legacy performance and left Riyadh with history. In the four-belt era, no man had ever become undisputed in 3 weight divisions until that moment. He did it against the sport's biggest active draw, after moving up 2 weight classes, on a platform designed to make sure the entire sporting public could see it. For that achievement, Crawford has made no secret of what he thinks he's now worth. He has publicly floated a $100 million target for his next fight, daring the market, and specifically Riyadh season, to meet his price. Is that number realistic? In a traditional PPV system, probably not. On a Saudi-backed stage designed for headline impact, perhaps. The field of opponents who could justify it is short but compelling. A rematch with Canelo Alvarez, a super middleweight test against David Benavidez, a junior middleweight showdown with a belt holder like Tim Tszyu, or a welterweight catchweight blockbuster versus Jaron "Boots" Ennis if a scale down makes sense. Each choice carries different risks and broadcast politics. Each would need a buyer willing to frame the fight as an event, not just a title defense. On the other side of the ring, Alvarez's night was as sobering as it was historic. He is still the sport's most bankable star and will remain the gravitational center at super middleweight once he recovers from elbow surgery. But the economics around him may change. If Crawford's win depresses the appetite for a direct rematch and fans finally demand a Benavidez fight, Alvarez's next negotiation becomes both a business and a legacy conversation. Even with a $100 million purse behind him, he remains the only active fighter who routinely draws 8 figures to step through the ropes. How he deploys that leverage after a loss will set the tone for the division. If you zoom out, the Canelo vs. Crawford balance sheet becomes a case study in the new era of boxing finance. Streaming giants want tentpoles that deliver global minutes watched and social lift. Host nations want tourism spikes and headlines that travel. Fighters want guarantees that match their cultural footprint. Promoters want to underwrite all of it without taking a bath. Those interests line up some nights. Other nights, the math snaps. If Hearn is right, this was one of those nights, an unmissable event that required a subsidy. That doesn't mean the strategy is flawed. It simply means the definition of success has changed. Netflix got what it wanted, a live event that dominated its platform and introduced millions of non-boxing fans to a story they could follow. Saudi Arabia got what it wanted, global attention, another viral night, and a reinforced narrative that the biggest fights now happen in Riyadh. Crawford and Alvarez got what they wanted, generational checks and a stage commensurate with their names. The only open question is how many of these nights any backer can carry before insisting on a rebalanced model. As Hearn cautioned, boxing always carries a high risk of incurring losses. The sport's volatility is part of its charm and its curse. Unlike closed league models, boxing has to build coalitions every time. A site fee here, a rights holder there, a sponsor willing to cover the shoulder programming. The Canelo vs. Crawford fight simplified one piece by centralizing funding. It complicated another by elevating fighter pay to a level that demands near-perfect monetization to break even. The temptation is to dismiss concerns about profit when the soft returns are overwhelming. Boxing's place in the mainstream was restored for a weekend. Netflix proved it could deliver live sports at scale. A Saudi city turned into the capital of the fight game, again. But sports are businesses as well as stories. If the goal is sustainability, someone must eventually design an equation where guarantees, production, and distribution meet without requiring a patron to sign a blank check. One path is to blend models, keep the global stream but reintroduce premium tiers in select markets, expand on-site hospitality packages that rival F1, build sponsor slates that match the luxury positioning of these cards, deepen week-long festival monetization so that concerts, fan experiences, and secondary events subsidize the main event. Another path is simply to accept that certain nights are loss leaders because their intangible value outstrips the cost. Whatever comes next, the Canelo Alvarez vs. Terence Crawford night will remain a landmark. It delivered a $47 million gate, third biggest in the sport's history, and 41 million viewers on Netflix. It returned boxing to a global water cooler. It crowned an unprecedented three-division, undisputed champion. It also triggered a frank conversation about how mega fights are funded in 2024 and beyond, and who writes the checks when the lights go down. For fans, the immediate questions are as juicy as the business ones. Who does Crawford fight next, and where does the money come from? Does Alvarez reset against a mandatory, or step straight into a generational matchup with Benavidez? Will Netflix double down on live boxing after a ratings win, or will it demand formats that offer clearer paths to profit? Will Riyadh season continue to act as the sport's apex venue, underwriting nights that no other market can stage? Saudi Arabia has indicated through deeds, not words, that its fight calendar is only getting busier. Turkey Al-Shika's portfolio now spans undisputed heavyweight championships, cross-code experiments, and crossover superfights. Even if a single card runs in the red, the program continues to deliver the one commodity modern sports crave: global attention. In that sense, Hearn's speculation about a loss isn't a criticism. It's an acknowledgement that boxing's biggest moments often ask someone to pay for the privilege of staging them. What do you make of the economics behind Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford? Are Saudi-funded mega-events sustainable, smart brand strategy, or both? Should Netflix keep pushing into live boxing after delivering 41 million viewers? And how should promoters adapt the model to balance reach and revenue? Add your take in the comments. For verified updates on fighter purses, gate records, Riyadh season schedule, and the next moves for Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll track the business and the boxing, because in this era, the two are inseparable.